Hi friends, it's a nice Sunday morning out here in India, and we have come up with this new video on which data science role you should apply for. Now, a lot of people have questions on, what kind of role they should apply for, and there are so many companies, hiring data science professionals in massive numbers these days. Just look at all those fancy titles out there. ML engineer, a principal data scientist, big data engineer, data visualization expert, AI scientist, data science advisor, consultant, and there are so many such titles. Although there are certain differences among certain titles, in the way and approach that they specialize on, there's a considerable degree of overlap also. Now, however, most of the companies and their recruitment teams, as well as their leadership, often do not know what is the role they are exactly hiring for. This often leads to wrong expectations from a candidate who has been looking at, doing some specific types of tasks, but they eventually land up in a job that requires them to do something completely different. So, one important thing before that is, don't go by the designation. Often, a lot of people get stuck with the wrong notion of hierarchy and designation. There is no industry standard. I have seen people with almost over 10 years of experience being designated as an analyst, while people with just 6 to 7 years of experience, or at max, that much worth of experience, being titled as a vice president of a company. There are a lot of factors that you need to consider to understand if it is the right designation. Often companies have different salary bands, and in order to fit you within those bands, they would consider redesignating you. Company, brand, the size, the team hierarchy they follow are some of the most important factors which you should definitely consider, while looking at a role that you are applying for. I have worked with managers and senior managers in places with much more experience, depth of knowledge, and capability of handling more complex and challenging roles. Again, while at the same time, I have even seen people carrying designations on their shoulders way above their competency level. So don't really bother about designation. In general, still, if you want to have a flavor of how it is generally in the industry, although there is no industry standard as such, a person who starts off in this field starts off as being an intern. Right. When you are fresh in college and you want to do some projects on your own, with a supervisor or with a mentor, you generally do an internship, right? And once you get into a company in a full-time employee mode, then you often land up with this title called associate or an analyst. As you progress with your years of experience, you then get more fancier titles like consultant or senior analyst, and it goes on. So you then move to a senior consultant, or an associate or an assistant manager, and then to a manager, a lead or a lead consultant, a team lead, and then you progress along the corporate ladder and move up to a position designated as senior manager, and then from there you could be a AVP, then a VP, director, senior director, head. There are a lot of these designations, and there are in fact much more than the designations that's covered in the slide. But this kind of gives you an overall overview of different kinds of titles that generally people are designated with in this. Now, while it is true, that in order to be a data science professional in this competitive world, you need to be fully equipped with the various tools and technologies at your disposal. It's definitely not necessary to learn everything under this. Now, you would find titles including the word analyst. So it's important for you to understand what is the role of an analyst and who exactly is an analyst, right? So an analyst is someone who is more of a specialist, getting hired to do a specific type of task. For example, you could land up in a job where your title is a financial analyst. So your main role here would be to uh, analyze situations related to the financial world. It could be related to loan payment, repayment of loans, the probability of default, things like that. You could also earn a title of a business analyst, where your main role would include understanding about the business in which your particular company or organization is working for. It's a retail business that you are, working with, then you should have a good understanding of the retail context. Similarly, you could, be an insurance analyst, and you have to have a good understanding of insurance that way. Now, while this is true for analysts, there's also often a very similar term called consultant. Although there's a very good, very high degree of overlap between an analyst and a consultant. More specifically, consultant is supposed to be someone who is a generalist in nature instead of a specialist, and he or she should be that person, that go-to person, who should have a holistic understanding and who should have the knowledge and skills over a broad area, broader than an analyst in that way. So if you are into marketing, then you need to have an understanding of not only marketing but also about finance and operations and other things, so that when you are facing a client, you are able to address the client's concerns in a way that you are not just looking at a very short spectrum of things, and rather you are having a much more holistic view to be able to comment on or recommend something. So imagine a consultant is, in a way like a doctor who is prescribing medicines, right? And a doctor does that by looking at different things. So there are doctors who are specialized in their fields, right? Who are maybe a gynecologist, maybe a pediatrician, or maybe who is specialized in liver transplant. So these are specialists. On the other hand, you would also find doctors who are in the department of internal medicine, or who are practitioners of general medicine. So these people are more around consultant who try to understand all of the symptoms in your body, what are the problems you're facing, and then come up with a recommended solution to the form of a prescription and certain drugs that could be administered to you. Now, there are often also terms including engineer and scientist. Now, these two again are very much overlapping. You would find titles like data science engineer, ML engineer, also data scientist. So what really is the difference between them? Often, like I said, there's a considerable degree of overlap. So being a data scientist means that you are looking at things in a more holistic manner. You need to have an understanding of, things like, right, starting from the database side of things to the architecture to the front end where you are trying to do some visualization. Maybe you are using a Power BI tool, or you are using Tableau, or you might be using some of the other JavaScript related technologies, AngularJS or React.js, right? Node.js. A lot of those technologies are there for the front end web development. So although you need to have a familiarity with certain technologies in each of these fields, able to connect the dots in the full stack, it's not always often required that as a data scientist you really need to be in depth on all of this, right? The main or the core job of a data scientist is to solve real world challenges using advanced scientific and research oriented methodologies and techniques. Whereas often an engineer mostly finds himself or herself focusing on tasks which would complement the data scientists in a way, and they are mostly involved with building the necessary infrastructure to make the life of data scientists a little more easier. Like you would find titles like solutions architect, big data engineer, machine learning engineer, all of these terms. Right? So the data scientists are people who are mostly engaged in a constant interaction with the infrastructure, the maintenance of the databases, the data warehouses, which is again helped out by data engineers mostly, who are responsible for building and maintaining this kind of infrastructure. Right. Now, to check out full video on a complete roadmap to become a data science professional in 2020, I would recommend you watch this next video. And that's all we have to discuss for today. Hope you learned something new. Our goal is to help you learn data science in a full-fledged manner. For us to be able to make more such in-depth videos, we would need your love and support. So if you like this video, kindly give it a thumb up, like and share. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated about our latest sessions. As a side note, if you're looking for private mentorship, career counseling, or you want to practice mock interviews for being well prepared to ace data science interviews, or if you're looking for some general guidance and training on data science, especially if you're a beginner and you do not want to fall prey to cheap marketing gimmicks out there, right? You may fill up the form that is provided in the description section below of this video, and one of our support team members would get in touch with you. So that's all for today, guys, and wish you happy learning. Stay tuned. We will come up with our next video pretty soon.